All right. So Abigail's, I guess, going to share. She said she had some thoughts on, what was it, forgiveness and the problem of good and evil and things like that.
Yeah, yeah. Let me see. So I have no. Is there a way? Can I draw somewhere on here?
You can share screen, I
Uh,
think, and then you could draw on like paint or something if you want. Or
yeah, maybe. Let me see. I have like messy notes, but then I didn't refine them. No, don't update. Stop. Now it's updating.
oh no.
Oh no, there we go. Okay. You know what? I think I'm just gonna try to talk. Okay, so there's a couple of quotes that I was like thinking about and then connecting. One of them is that so Jacob Collier, he's like a music. Have you heard of him? Love him. Yeah, he's cool. So he's like a good musician, but he's also very approachable and just has a great way of approaching it. Anyway, he said there's no such thing as a wrong note if you know how to harmonize, which I think is that in shorthand, I guess that's what I'm realizing or trying to say, like that's how forgiveness, God's forgiveness, and then also like our forgiveness, if we participate in that, works. Um, like it it really does like it's not this arbitrary thing of like, well, it's bad, but it's okay. But it genuinely changes the original nature of even the original action so that eventually it can really be forgiven and really all be good. I think David Bentley Hart apparently talks about that because somebody said that he did. But yeah, so that forgiveness, one way to look at forgiveness is taking this wrong note or this dissonance and then harmonizing around it till eventually it's worked into the entire picture and it ceases to be even a wrong note. And I think that's good because a lot of the time when I would think about like God's forgiveness earlier or before, it was just like this arbitrary thing of like, well, yeah, it's bad and like you deserve hell for it, but it's okay. It was like, it's not really okay. I mean, it's still bad. But then I guess there's like ways to do this like wrong, right? Well, I was at Thanksgiving. So at Thanksgiving, you really have to think about forgiveness and dealing with the unforgivable people too. So that then I was thinking about that because like there's people in my family that I just can't be around because of the way that they are, because of what they're doing. I can't, and so like there's the thing about like you can't really have forgiveness fully if there's not a reconciliation type of thing,
Hmm.
or like if the person's still doing the thing, like if someone's doing something bad, you just ignore it. You just like go stay with them and just like pretend it didn't happen at all in any way. That's not really forgiveness. It's just not dealing with the wrong thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I drew this like little like thing of like a sort of jagged thing and then like a pattern around it, which I guess is like the process of harmony and forgiveness. But that sort of pattern of like correct response slash forgiveness, I guess another way to think of forgiveness like the correct response to the sin or whatever. But that includes this like leaving space around it if necessary. And like that's I guess that part of the process of forgiveness or of response to something wrong is to deal with it and like to respond to it as a bad thing. I like to, yeah, mostly by giving space, I guess. Um,
Yeah, I'm checking, but it doesn't really erase or say the wrong things right in a way. It still holds to the truth somehow.
yeah, because that's the mystery. It's like it's forgiven, but also it did happen, and you have to like deal with it. So it's like both of those. in the area of thinking about like covering up stuff that's wrong, I guess that's like toxic femininity, because we all know like toxic masculinity of like oppressing and like accusing and stuff, but like
We know.
broken femininity would be like the
Mitch knows for sure.
yeah, just like
I'm just
it doesn't matter, and just like don't allowing oneself to be hurt, I guess, or the bad thing to continue, and just like continue to feed it even though it needs to be dealt with. But anyway,
yeah.
then I was thinking of another, so then I was like that, okay, well how does that work? Let's see. Oof. So then there's this line from a Jacob Collier song, actually, that is, it's you sanctify, don't justify, and that wait, yeah. So then I think that's a good way to put it. Like, oh man, so unorganized. So another way, I guess another image for the whole thing of like harmonizing and forgiveness as harmonizing is like if you have a seed that's like a bitter seed. And this goes for sin, this goes for like moral and natural, this goes for like a bad thing that somebody does, but I think it also goes for just like bad stuff that happens in life that maybe you don't even blame on someone. So I think it's the same like process and of like dealing with that, or like dealing with trauma or something, and then like a thing that someone's done. Anyway, so if you have like a bitter seed, and then but what grows from that becomes a completely good like fruit or like flower in this through the process of the growth. And then finally in the end, even like the original seed is no longer bitter, and like the evil has gone out of it in some way. And so yeah, but then something that, and this is sort of where it gets into like the like good and evil thing, or like the problem of evil, something that let's see, oh yeah, something that I found myself doing with stuff that I was trying to frame correctly so that I could have like the forgiveness and healing, was saying like, well, because good things came of this bad thing, like the bad thing itself is okay, kind of thing. And like justifying it in a way. And this gets into, I don't know if you've read The Doors of the Sea by David Bentley Hart.
I haven't. I heard Cal talk about it a little bit before though.
It's really good. You should read it.
Okay.
It's pretty short.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's always good for me.
It's just like about the problem of evil. And I think he talks about like how good is ontologically like more real than evil, and like it's deeper. So evil is a sort of twisting and corruption and sort of like a veil over the truth, which is the kingdom, which is like goodness, which is always shining through the evil events. But he's very insistent about, and he points out how Jesus was very insistent about, like, evil is not okay. Like, there's none of this balance. There's none of this, oh, we have to have the good and the bad. There's none of that in Jesus. Like, he is all healing. It's like all, it can be all, or it should be all good, and not giving there's that text about like giving no place to Satan. There's no place. Yeah. So yeah. To use a very mundane example, I just had a cold. I was like getting over a cold. So that's like a bitter, and like that's like a bad thing that happens, right? To be sick. But so one way to take that badly and not to do the harmony and not to do the forgiveness would be to just be like, I'm sick. I was sick. It was bad. And to keep allowing that seed to like grow bad fruit and bad fruit and bad fruit. Like he talks about a root of bitterness, just to keep holding on to that bad thing and like reliving it and continuing to give it a place. But then, so instead of that, I want to like see the good and just see how, you know, maybe some time of rest is good and it lets me think about things that I normally wouldn't, and stuff like that.
Mhm.
So that's allowing good fruit to grow from it. So that's good. But then another way,
No, that's go ahead. Sorry. I was just
but
agreeing with
then,
you.
yeah, but then another way to me, like another thing that I could do that wouldn't quite be the best is also to say, okay, well, now we have all this good from the cold. So therefore, sort of holding on to both the bitter seed and the good fruit, like at the same time, and saying, well, it was necessary for me to be sick and suffer and be in this corrupted body of death and have a cold, in order that I could have this good fruit and this, you know, I mean, I came up with this whole idea during the cold. So like, in order that all this good could happen, it was necessary that I have evil, and it was necessary that I be in pain, and it was necessary and all of that. And to me, that's would lead me in the wrong way. That's like a bad, that's not good to do that. Like that's like, I made this video like honey and barbiturates. So, which is like, barbiturates is kind of poison. It's this image from this one book. But anyway, I use it all the time to talk about like so much of life is like what we're offered is like half truths. There's something that's partially good, but also partially bad. And the message is that to get the good, you have to get the bad. I mean, the ultimate example being, I think, eternal conscious torment. Like, yeah, God loves you infinitely and we can have heaven, but to get that, you also have to accept, you know, eternal hell and all of that. So to me, this is like an instance of that same pattern of saying, well, you know, to get this good, I had to go through this, like, evil. And that could seem good, and like it is good, and it's better than just being bitter about the evil and not seeing good at all. It's way better than that. But it still is like, I guess, leaving a place for that evil and like holding on to evil and holding on to pain as like part of creation, as part of my identity, as part of the truth. And with a cold, it's one thing, but then if you have like a deep trauma and stuff, that I think what it does is I would forever identify with that, and like it would be an inherent part of me, and it'd be like, well, I couldn't have all this good if I hadn't been hurt, which I don't think that's true. But then and so sanctify, don't justify, right? Like on one hand, don't justify it, don't say, well, it's okay that this evil thing happened. The end doesn't justify the means and all that. But then on the other hand, to sanctify it, what does that mean? Is somehow that you just, the original sin or evil thing or hurt, it's like it never happened in a way. And that's sort of, I guess, the direction that I'm moving with big like wounds in my life. That's sort of what it starts to feel like. Not only that it's led to good things or that it's over and doesn't hurt anymore, but somehow the only way to describe is that like it never happened. Like, I guess to see the bigger picture, to see underneath that bad event, to see around it, and so much that it itself like becomes totally reframed and you just see it in a different way. And it yeah. And that's, you know, the whole thing of forgiving and forgetting, and our sins are cast away and they, you know, in the forgetfulness, it's like a transformation.
Is it like a change in your perspective, or what do
I
you mean
think
by?
good way to put it, yeah. because it is perspective. I guess a really beautiful example of this, I think, is there's a channel called Special Looks for Special Kids that's about, really good channel. It's about like people with various disabilities and stuff. And there's this kid named John, and he has that disease of like butterfly skin, where his body's just an open wound since he was born. He just has to have bandages all the time, and that's his parents' whole life, is just caring for him. But he's just the sweetest person, and he has such a beautiful, and like the interviewer at one point asks him, do you ever think about how your first introduction to this world was excruciating pain? Like, do you ever think about that? And of course that is true. Like, technically that's true. His first introduction to this world was excruciating pain since he was a baby, since he was born. And that's like a bitter thing. Like that's as bad as it gets. So they asked him about that. He was just like, oh, he was like, I never thought of it that way. That's funny. He was like, I just think, when I think about being born, I think about like how much my parents loved me, and how that I think about, I'm amazed that somebody loved me so much that even when I was this little tiny helpless thing, they wanted to learn about how they could help me, and they wanted me, and they took me home, and they wanted to take care of me. And like, it didn't even seem to register in him. He didn't like care about the whole thing about the excruciating pain, because that's not what he saw, and it's not what I guess he experienced looking back. Like, so his parents' love, in his experience, like his love and his parents' love is ontologically like deeper and more real than the whole pain. So in a sense, the pain, and of course even more so in like presumably the kingdom of God, if he was to have a glorified body and everything, but even now it's like that pain, it's real, right, in that he's lying on the bed with his bandages and everything, but it's not. Yeah.
So it's kind of like this measure of gratitude or something outweighs the suffering, to where the suffering almost disappears or something like that.
Sort of.
Is that a way of looking at it? Or I mean, I get what you're saying. That's an incredibly beautiful story.
He's great.
Yeah, that's one thing that was kind of going through in my mind recently a little bit, was just if I was more grateful and thankful for the things in my life, then the suffering would almost fade to the background or something. Like if someone gave me, like I didn't have any money for food or something, and they gave me half a sandwich, I could say, kind of glass half empty, glass half full thing. I could be grateful that I have half a sandwich, or I could be upset that I don't have a whole sandwich. And it's like, it's just, but if I'm grateful, then I don't even realize like that, like I was, I don't know. That's
Yeah.
so I didn't know if there was like, if there was a way of just staying in a state of thankfulness, if that kind of, I don't know, if it alleviates the suffering, if that's the right way to say it. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's
what you're saying. As you zoom out, you see more of the.
I can't hear you.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know if it's like, I don't know if there's words. My best guess is that maybe there's some sort of weird noise reduction thing or something. So it's like trying to mute your voice with the other ones, because like I can hear the people in the background and your voice is the same level for some reason.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can you lean in for it closer? Lean into your mic. Tell us what you're gonna say.
Does this work better?
It does actually, I think.
Well, I was just saying, I like what you're saying about when you zoom out, you see that what you thought was dissonant is actually harmonious with everything that's going on. That's a really profound one to see.
Yeah, but then at the same time, doing that in a way that doesn't in any way justify or in any way accept evil. Because like a lot of people sort of get to that middle place of like seeing the harmony and seeing the good fruit of bad things, but then they say, well, the bad things like is okay, or like yeah, I guess just that. I don't know. David Winley Hart talks about it. Or says
Yeah,
something.
we're never off the hook for uh, contributing to evil or ignoring it, really, or putting some glossy spin on it such that I don't do anything about it. But it's nice that you can understand that there's a picture beyond you. There's a broader symphony, and that your instrumentation is still going to play the right notes. I don't know. Yeah, just because grace abounds in sinners, we should sin all the time like that.
I only got pieces of that.
Yeah.
I think you said the last part you said was that you kind of quoted that verse, like if it, some people say, let us do evil that good may come type of thing.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess it's realizing that God doesn't say, let us do evil that good may come.
Mhm.
Mm.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the prodigal son a little bit, parable where like, yeah, that's a hard thing to deal with because it's like, did we need suffering to know his love better? Because it's like, which one of the sons knew his love better? And I don't think we need the suffering because he tells the older son, like, oh, I was here the whole time. Like you just,
Yeah.
were somehow unaware of it and you needed that shift or something. Because if I were to say, I need the suffering or I need the bad in order to have the good or recognize the good, then it's almost like I have to say, well, I need hell to keep growing, that
Yeah.
heaven would keep growing. It's like,
Yeah, it's the
And-
same thing.
and yeah, in order for heaven to be more, in order for love to grow, then I need almost like evil to grow or something, or hell to grow. What does this say? Chat. Mitch asks, was it not necessary that the Christ should suffer these things and enter into his glory? What do you think about this bit? Yeah, that's a good question.
I guess he suffered as to the extent that any of us suffer.
Is
Um,
suffering evil though? Is that, I don't know. That's the hard thing
Yeah.
too. It's
It is.
because, yeah, that's why would Christ say that? Or is it, or is our perspective of suffering evil? Is that kind of the thing that we're
Mhm.
getting at? Because if love is self-sacrificial, that's not necessarily a suffering, or we shouldn't experience it as suffering.
Well, I don't think love is self-sacrificial.
But
Not in a way, but
can you explain that more? Unpack that.
wow. Self-sacrificial in the sense of genuinely, to me, love is like you have love in yourself and love yourself and experience love, and then you expand yourself and you can take more people into yourself. But maybe there's a healthy way to understand love is self-sacrificial, but I don't think, at least I've never understood it in a healthy way, and I don't think that most of the other people who are talking about it were understanding it. They understand it in a way that like is you do things that you don't want to do for somebody else. I'm just like, that's not how it feels.
It's self-punishment. It's
Yeah.
not love.
It's not. It better not be. I don't want you to punish yourself for me. That's
And how can you esteem someone? There has to be a sense in which you esteem someone higher than yourself. But,
yes and no.
yeah, I know that you talked about this last time we were together. It's really worth cracking that golf. I'm interested in your thoughts.
Good.
I think
I did.
he said we kind of talked about this last time, or at least we touched on it a little bit. And I think, would you say it's really worth tracking down or something like that? Is that what you said? I don't know. I tried to translate for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna do this interview coming up, and we're gonna talk about that as well. Because I think it's just the whole like tradition. Well, I don't want to say traditional, because sometimes people think that's good. The whole conventional view of like morality is very sadomasochistic, and it's gotten into Christianity, and at least in my experience, it's never done me any good. And it's never helped me to love people, to think that I have to suffer or to hurt
Hmm.
for them. I guess even if in practice or on one level, that is what's happening, there's a deeper level to it. I guess you could put it like this. God is as far as the Christ suffering part, there's the Trinity always, like, under the entirety of reality is within the Trinity, right? Of like, which is just love and just like bliss and being consciousness and bliss and just love and not suffering and joy. So even while Christ is suffering the most completely that anyone ever could, he's also still within the Trinity, like it extends all the way.
I'm trying to
And
track
not
with you.
okay, so like say that the Trinity is up here,
Okay.
and like God is just in perfect love and peace and contentment, right? And it's heaven,
Hmm.
nothing's wrong.
Yeah.
And then, but also down here, like being crucified and suffering so much. I guess to me, that's part of what Jesus' death or Christ's death means, is bringing hell, like illuminating and bringing up even the worst kind of suffering is still held within. Like it's brought up. There's a deeper underlying reality to it, which is good. And that's more real than the suffering. And it's more real than the evil. And it's always there beneath it. And you can eventually just see only the good.
Yeah, I'm not quite sure how to get it either. This is an
Yeah.
incredibly complicated topic. I don't know. And I don't know. Yeah, it's hard for me. That's why I'm curious. I wanted to, I wouldn't mind digging into that more with you. Because but my youngest sister, Natalie, she's it was after I think you and me and Mitch talked last time, and I brought it up to her because she's the same way, where she had the experience of trying to be self-sacrificial and it
Yeah.
being a terrible experience for her,
Yeah.
where it was more I don't want to say she never really knew herself, but it was almost like being devoured or picked apart by people all the time is what it kind of sounds like. And so the more you're making space for people, like you're talking about, the more you're kind of losing yourself or something. Or that making space shouldn't be a losing of yourself, but it was like she experienced it that way. And I, for some reason, I think Mitch is kind of like me too. We didn't really go through that, so I don't know if that's why. Oh, Craig's trying to join now. Yeah, so that's why I think it's like I want to figure it out because it feels a little bit foreign to my mind. Hey, Craig, thanks for
Hey
joining.
everyone, I hope it's not too obnoxious. I just jumped in here.
No, I don't. I think it's good. We were going through about can we give him a rundown real quick or no? Of
Okay. So we're talking about forgiveness and also like evil in general, the place of evil or sin or suffering in like reality, whether it has a place at all. Like that forgiveness is harmonizing. Jacob Collier said there's not such a thing as a wrong note if you know how to harmonize, sort of work that note into the rest of the musical composition, it ceases to be a wrong note. And like that's how forgiveness really works. It makes even the original sin not bad anymore in any way. But I think a lot of people pause sort of halfway along that process and are in a sense still hanging on to the evil, or even to the suffering, or like to the pain, and saying that it's necessary and or that it's real. Yeah, people are still hanging on to that in one way or another.
That's pretty interesting, and I like the Jacob Collier quote. And it's nice to meet you, by the way. I don't think we've ever met.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Oh, you
Thank
haven't?
you.
I thought you guys had met before. This was the guy I was telling you about when you said you were interested in mathematics too. And this
Mhm.
was my friend who said he was looking into a new form of mathematics at one point. He
Mhm.
told me. So, but yeah, so I think we're, if I, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Abigail. So I think we're kind of exploring that idea of just how you don't necessarily, you don't call evil good, because that would be wrong to do
Oh,
that. And
yeah.
it's
Okay, yeah,
not,
that's what it is.
and
Yeah.
it's not, and kind of, because if you start doing that, then you're kind of saying if love and heaven are going to grow to more and they're going to be expanding, then hell would also have to be expanding
Mhm.
to like kind of create a backdrop for that. Because if you go that route, it seems like you would have to kind of do something like that. And then we kind of we're starting to take a rabbit trail with love, whether or not or how I guess how love is referred to as self-sacrificial, if that's harmful or good. But that felt like kind of a bit of a rabbit trail. So whichever one you guys want to go. I mean, I don't mind going down both routes, but we could stick to
Yeah.
the main one for now, good and evil, problem of good and evil and forgiveness and things like that. Because it seemed related somewhat a little bit to like the prodigal son story in a way, where you have one and he goes off and he suffers and he experienced the harm and the sin, and then he comes back to the father and really experiences the father's love. And then the first son didn't experience the wrong and almost is kind of still estranged from his father's love, and he doesn't understand it. But his father tells him, well, I was here the whole time, like you could have it. So it doesn't necessarily seem, to me, it doesn't seem like it was necessary that you have to experience going astray and suffering and living with the pigs to have the father's love, because he's always there. But then at the same time, it's like, well, the other one kind of, I don't know, almost feels like he knows it better. I don't know. You got any thoughts?
Yeah. Sometimes it does seem like that, and I guess in practice it works out sometimes that way, that either the people who were the worst, like Saul or like Paul, or the people who suffer the most do come closest to God. But as somebody who I think who definitely came to God through a lot of pain, I don't want to say that. I don't think that's the conclusion that I should draw from that, is that the pain was good in any way. Even though like the painful events do seem to be what opened me up, what opened me up, it couldn't have been the pain itself. It was like something through the pain, something inside of it, something despite it. But I don't want to say that like God, what did you say, that like God uses evil, that God does evil so that good may come. Like there has to be a different way to frame it than that. And that's what a lot of people, that's what I hear a lot of people do, is like obviously the worst would just be to be bitter about the bad thing and to keep holding on to it as a bad thing and never let anything good come from it and never heal at all. But then the second worst thing is like, I think what people do is like that the suffering is good, or that we need suffering, or that through suffering that's the only way that we come to God, and sort of it's like a sadomasochistic bit of thing. And I feel like there's another way that's better that I want to do instead.
It seems like the resistance here is that we don't want to outright say pain or suffering is intrinsically good.
Mm-hmm.
Something seems wrong with that.
Yeah.
And maybe it's helpful to make it explicit why that is. It almost suggests a kind of masochism, which we all have a disgust reaction to. But Abigail, you had alluded to the idea that, goodness maybe isn't intrinsic to the thing, isn't intrinsic to pain, but it's goodness as a result of what it leads to.
Yeah, that so if you have like an evil thing, it's like the one of the images I'd use is like a bitter seed that then goes on and bears like a good fruit, and then eventually even the bitterness like goes out of the seed, and through time and through the process of forgiveness and healing, the whole thing becomes transformed. And that is, I want to say that's like the Christian cosmology anyway, that evil will be washed out of the whole earth and it will all be made good and like made new. Yeah. I bet another phrase that I'm thinking of is the thing about dying to death or conquering death by death. So that one wants to get to the death that's in our life. We want to not only just say, well, God can use it for good, but go even a step further and allow it to be completely transformed in the way that we look at it, and like none at all.
Yeah, there was this actually earlier today. I don't know why I was thinking of this, and I was like, man, I need to get home so I can actually draw this image, because I haven't drawn anything in a long time. But for some reason, I was thinking of the Grim Reaper, and I just need to draw a picture of the Grim Reaper and him just holding out a cup and saying "L'chaim," which means to life. So it's like, so it's kind of seems kind of similar. It's just like death is actually to life, is what it leads to. But if you could get there, I don't know. But I don't know that it's just. I don't. Yeah, it's. I don't know. It's difficult.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
when we're talking about the goodness of particular events, you could imagine a kind of Spider-Man style multiverse tree where you have these events and they go to other ones and there's all these possibilities. And those specific events, it sounds like we're talking about whether or not those events are those, whether they're good or bad. And it sounds like I wonder if you guys believe that there are some types of events that are intrinsically good, that are always good independently of what they lead to or where they come from.
Wow, that's a good question. Yeah, I think I at least I would think so. And I mean, I know I used to say this a lot and it got me in trouble, but I would always say that truth is better than lying. And I still think I'm on that side. I'm like, even if that leads me to extreme amounts of suffering, I think I would still hold to truth.
But then Weihart did say it's better to be kind than right, because like the deepest truth, sometimes by telling the like literal truth, you betray like a deeper truth.
Yeah, and it's not just yeah, and I don't think that means I'd like just always say what I think is true or my opinion or something, because that's something I got to wrestle with as well. And there's times, I think if I was going to hold to truth or not lying, at least not lying, I think a lot of times it would just make me be quiet rather than say something. And I feel like, because a lot of people, because I've had that question posed to me before too, where people take it to extremes or something. It's like if you are housing, gosh, I'm just gonna really expose myself. It's not good. If you were housing like Jews during the Nazi thing or something, and they asked you if you were housing them, what would you do then? Would you lie then? And it's like, and most people would lie, but I'm like, well, I don't have to say anything at all, do I? Like they could just kill me. Like I don't know
Jews
why I
would
have
die.
to.
So this is an interesting
It'd get my
question.
farm. I guess they would. I don't know.
Would you guys agree that a truth event, the telling of the truth, has a counterpart, an antipart, which is telling a lie? I wonder if for the same reasons, if you think that being kind has an antipart in being unkind.
Yeah, I have trouble with truth and goodness, because it's like so much of that depends on perspective. I used to think I would be telling people the truth if I was telling them they were going to hell. Well, I wasn't, but I thought I was. Was that telling the truth? Was I lying, etc.? To me, well, I just think about, I guess I have a belated answer to that one question of whether there's an intrinsically good act. I mean, what's intrinsically good is like beauty. And beauty is always beautiful, no matter what, it just is. And goodness and truth are beautiful.
Sorry, it's kind of quiet. I'm just thinking. I'm not really sure. There was another question I wanted to ask, but I don't know if I should redirect it or not. So it's kind of something we touched on earlier, but I don't know. I'm still thinking about Greg's question. I don't know, because it could some things just be neither that, like being kind. I don't think I would have to have being unkind to have the other one. Like, I think there's a neutral aspect to everything as well. So I don't know that I'd really necessarily go that route. And even with telling the truth too, it's like, well, God doesn't tell me all things true. I don't think he ever lies, but he doesn't tell me things, like, because otherwise I'd know everything. Like, there's so many things that are hidden, so many mysteries still to be revealed. So like, even if I was doing something I knew to be wrong, like, it doesn't mean you have to go tell on yourself. But I think if which my mom said I used to do as a kid, I used to go snitch on myself and get myself in trouble. But like, even now, it's like, I don't think if I weren't to do that, I don't think that's lying to just not tell somebody something. But if I was asked plainly, that would get me in trouble too. Because sometimes my parents would ask me something like, oh, when I started drinking or something. My parents were they don't like drinking at all. And they just asked me if I drank, and I was like, yeah, I started drinking and I don't plan on stopping anytime soon. And then it's like, in coming from your child's mouth, that sounds incredibly rebellious. But to me, I was just like, I'm just going to be as honest as I possibly can. And then I'm sure like it was probably, but I mean, I didn't tell him before that either, though. And I don't know that I was necessarily lying to hide something, or because I don't even know that I wasn't hiding it intentionally. But even if you're hiding something intentionally, I don't think that's necessarily a lie either. Because I would think then you could call God a liar, because I think he does have things hidden. I think things are revealed to people that are seeking and attentive to him. But I mean, he says he speaks all things in parables, that seeing they may not see and hearing they may not hear. So there's like mysteries hidden for those that are really desiring it. So it's like intentionally veiling something or having something be concealed. So I don't know.
That's interesting. This has nothing to do with the being true or untrue or unkind, but no, I guess it has to do with truth. Because sometimes the parable and like the hidden truth can be more true than if you spell it out. People can take that so much the wrong way, and like so often we do. Think about a lot of the like plain truth out, people twist them so much. And oh, you've frozen. So yeah, I guess Jesus, by telling parables, was in a sense protecting the truth. And you can have the response that you have to that is it gets more to the heart. Yeah, it's more of like a emotional thing. You can't really analyze it. That's interesting.
It sounds like there's multiple values or ideals at play. So when you deliver something as a parable that you might deliver explicitly, when you deliver it explicitly, it may be true, but it's not graceful, or it lacks discretion. And so if you deliver it in parable, it both shows discretion and honesty. It feels like we've touched these values. We talked about kindness, we talked about discretion, I think is the one that we just did, or grace. And then honesty. Do you guys see these things existing in a kind of strict hierarchy?
Well, I think the transcendentals are like goodness, beauty, and truth, right? And then everything else stems from that. Being, goodness, truth, beauty, love is in there somewhere.
What do you think, Greg? Do you have any?
Well, I mean, I'm aware of the transcendentals. I think that's a good point to make. I hear other people call them normativities,
Mm.
three normativities. What I'll suggest, there's something that comes to mind and something that's informative for me is the philosophy of Max Shaler, who people who, if you're interested in Ian McGilchrist, I know some people in this group are. He writes about the left and right hemispheres.
Um,
Well, he's interested in Max Shaler. And so Max Shaler said, the same way we have concepts, like you have a concept of blueness or a door or, a hat. These are things that, the external world kind of makes an impression on your mind and you have concepts. But the same way, like it activates the logical part of your brain to create concepts. There's an emotional part of your brain that it impresses to leave values. That's which are analogous to the concepts. So you might have the value of discretion or the value of usefulness or pleasantness and honesty, etc. But what he thought, Shaler thought, was that they actually are in a hierarchy. And at the bottom of the hierarchy, you have things like their values of utility. Things like, is this useful? Is it pleasant? Which are kind of shallow, you see.
Pleasant
But
is not
then-
shallow
Well, what
for him.
it maybe not, but what he said is that that's just the first tier, and above that there's these other values that the lower ones have to be subservient to. And for
Hmm.
example, nobility, like if you do something noble because it's useful to you, then its value evaporates. But if you do something useful, they had to kind of be in service of the things above. And at the top of that hierarchy was something like sacredness. So for example, if I say I'm going to be good because it's useful to me,
Mhm.
then it's not good.
Yeah, order of affections, like in
Right.
the order of affections.
Exactly. If I do something honest because it will have pleasant results for me, like because it will be pleasant, maybe that's not a good example, but if you do something at the higher level, do a value at the higher level because of a motive at the lower level, then it's not, it undermines. And that's why he thought there was kind of a hierarchy.
Yeah, and I guess the other side or another step in that is, at least the way I experience it, once you start to get your like order of affections in order, then it becomes more fluid to where, because then wherever in the Bible it talks about order of affections, it was a while ago I was studying that, but it was talking about like discernment and basically loving what is good. To me, like there's the hierarchy, but then as we become healed, the lower motives or like the really instinctive things that are super easy become naturally fixed to the higher ones, so that what is pleasant is also all the other stuff. And it's just, so instead of having to like check off like, oh, is it pleasant, is it good, that you can just do like what you like, love God and do as you please, but you have everything in the right order, so you really want what's good. Yeah, so it doesn't undermine it anymore.
Super interesting.
Because I think if you live too long in the hierarchy state of mind, or no, if you live too long with that hierarchy broken up and separated so that the parts can fight each other, then we start thinking like pleasure is bad or doing things because they're useful to me is bad. But not really, or like you just you can live that way for very long.
Probably did a poor job explaining. I wonder,
think-
I wonder how you would say that the affects are related to the three transcendentals.
affect as in,
I thought I was affectations, maybe the values, the ideals, like pleasantness, like remind me, I thought you'd use you use the word affect to talk about
Order of affections. I
Oh,
think is what
yeah.
she
order of
said.
affections.
Yeah.
Was maybe I was misinterpreting that. What do you mean by affections?
I guess priorities, desires,
What you
Yeah.
give your
stuff that
attention
you
to.
worship. Yeah, attention, worship.
Affections like my affection for Jason. I heard affect like that had an effect. It produced a pleasant effect, but it's
Oh,
still
yeah.
the wrong word. I meant affect with an A.
Mhm.
Affection. What a mess. But okay.
Oh, this is good. This is really interesting to me. Yeah, I don't know. The order, it seems to me like everybody's order is different, and if it was the same, it'd just be, or if there was a certain structure to it, it seems like um, you would lose people's individuality or something. If there was if you could figure it out, right, then it would just be some sort of mathematical equation of like, here's the right things to focus on. Oh, this one's at the top of the hierarchy, then this, and then this. And it seems to me like it's always different for other people. Because like I could care about one thing more than like even wanting to be honest. Like I know that's not other people's priority. But for some reason, I mean, I'm a terrible liar anyway. So like even if I was to let that go, like it wouldn't do me any good. But like other people find that strange a lot of times. And other people will find like even when people got to vote in politics, like they're all voting for, usually if they're going to vote for somebody, the person they're voting for, they don't agree with everything, but they're voting on a value of like a hierarchy of values, and they're like, this person stands for this and this is at the top of my list, so I'm going to vote for that person. And they'll be like, well, what about this thing? And they're like, well, I guess I'm just voting what. So I mean, it seems like it's different for a lot of people. That's why I don't know how to structure it, and I don't know that it can be structured in a particular way. But it seems like if I don't want to say, gosh, like if it's all in service of love, then I think it'll sort itself out, I guess is what I'm saying. So I guess there would be like some sort of structure, but like to particularize it and put it all in order, I don't know that someone can do that, because it seems like everyone's created different, and God puts certain things on people's hearts that they're more zealous for, I guess you could say. But if those things, whatever you're zealous for, is in service of something like love, I think it would probably, the hierarchy of values would somehow work themselves out. I don't know. What do you guys think?
It sounds like you already surprised me, Jason.
Why?
It sounds like you're saying there is a hierarchy. There's love, and that's level 2. But level 1 is everything else.
Yeah,
So,
I think so. Yeah. So like even goodness and beauty and truth, those three, like if they're not in service of love, then they become corrupt, I think. Which I think a
Yeah.
lot of people, I don't know that a lot of people, but like I feel like some people might disagree with that. But if you like even the garden story, when she takes the fruit, that's the temptation. I think it names off those three, which is like she sees the fruit that it's let me see.
Oh yeah, good, pleasant to the eyes, and thing to be desired to make one wise.
Yeah, so it's like it's got all three of them right there. So if it's not, if you reach for the goodness or the beauty or the truth and it's not in service of love, then it's going to become corrupt. And so I think, yeah, love is at the top, it's also at the bottom or something like that, and then all the other ones are in between. I mean, maybe some are better than others, but they seem to almost have rise and fall. Like right now it seems like I think beauty's coming up, and it needs to, because we probably just gone through what a phase where it was all about truth, I guess you could say, or something, or finding the facts and particularizing everything, which is helpful. But now it's like, well, things have gotten kind of ugly from doing that, and we've lost sight of beauty. And so I don't know.
Yeah.
What do
guess
you mean? How surprised you? Sorry, go ahead, Abigail.
Oh, no, that if we take love as the ultimate, which I like that, and I never thought of that about the fruit. That's good. Just to make sure you have the right definition of love, because so many people have like the wrong. That's why and this is very, again, I like what you said about everybody having, as long as it's in service of love, having their own sort of own hierarchy, because it's very true. Like, I am personally biased toward beauty because, to me, in my perception, it's the purest one. Like, if I try to make decisions based on what's good, I'll get into this very legalistic morality and a lot of guilt, a lot of fear, and I will not choose what's good. If I try to make decisions based on what's true, I get into the same thing. But beauty, to me, always leads me in the right direction, and love reveals itself to me in that form. So that's how I know. But probably for other people, it's different.
Yeah, and I think that maybe it even ties into what you're talking about at the beginning too, is like love. As long as we have the right definition of it, then it's not it's not really slack on evil in a way. Like, it's not going to call evil good. It's not going to flatter people or something like that, where it's
Mm-hmm.
there's
Well, there's that Sherry quote: "Love is inexorable, and love loves unto purity." And yeah. From when we were talking last time.
yeah, that was good.
You know, in a certain way, beauty is fundamental, or I should say, truth depends on beauty.
Mhm.
If you believe that the appearances of things conceal reality, but they conceal truth. You know, like, if there's a veil between appearances, if appearances are kind of a veil between our perception and what is real, and you believe that beauty is the thing that happens when appearances actually disclose
Mhm.
reality, when
Mhm.
when the veil opens itself and you see through kind of nakedly, then in that way, I think you could make an argument that beauty is a precondition for truth or knowing truth.
Yeah. If
Yes.
something's not beautiful most of the time, well, then it's probably not true. I guess beauty is a good touchstone for me because it's harder to corrupt than the other ones. In a way, like, I don't know, there's some
Mm.
mm,
You know, like I could tell you something, I could fabricate some story and I could try to convince you that it's true. But if I brought some ugly thing in front of you and tried to tell you that it was
yeah,
beautiful, you would never be deceived.
yeah, yeah.
Hmm.
Mm,
It seems like it's harder. It's easier, even maybe even definitionally. Sorry. You understand what I'm trying to say. Like, yeah, like if I say something's true, uh, I don't know what that means for other people necessarily. If I'm talking about truth or even goodness in a way, but if I'm talking about beauty, it seems like we all kind of collectively can understand what it seems easier, at least to some degree. I don't know. I was trying to, while you guys were talking, I was trying to think of examples of where maybe beauty would even be subjective in a way. Because what is it? What's that quote? Beauty is in the eye of the beholder or something
okay.
too. So where like, it's like, I mean, I was just thinking, well, if you had a flower and you started like tearing it apart and looking at it, trying to particularize it and everything, like I'm wondering if that, so a lot of people would say, well, you just ruined the flower, you just ruined the beauty. but then you might have someone who's looking at it and being like, no, this is beautiful. Like this is, now that I'm seeing this one petal, it's even more beautiful or something like that. But I don't know if that's
There's a
I
nice
was
little
just
version of the whole "we murder to dissect" thing. I think that instantiates the pattern of like the cross to, in one sense, picking things apart is killing them and can be seen as bad, but in another sense, even the most small, little particularized part of something is still beautiful, and there's a perspective that finds that beautiful, and that's redemptive.
yeah.
Mm.
This is interesting.
You said something that was really interesting a while ago, Jason. You said that you have love at the top, maybe love at the bottom, but other things in between. But you said that love or beauty is dominant now, whereas in other parts of history, it may have been that another one was dominant or at the top of the hierarchy. It sounded like you were suggesting that whatever this hierarchy is, it changes through time.
I mean, it seems like it. I don't know if that's true though. I'm not a history buff, so I don't know if you should trust me. But I guess, I mean, it seems like with um well, I mean, like even talking about the flower and tearing it apart and kind of murdering to dissect, it was like that was kind of what science, I guess you could say, is doing, but it's like that it seemed like that's what needed to be done. Like we learned a lot, like gaining knowledge through that and stuff like that. Like you kind of have to tear the flower apart to understand it better in a way. And so maybe there was like, it seemed like there was this pursuit of truth and knowing the facts and knowing, particularizing everything, getting our things in boxes, like trying to figure things out so we could understand better. And that seemed like, I mean, like whether you want to argue that was good or bad, it seems like maybe a necessary process in history, I guess. And it seemed like that we're coming out of that now or something, because people are like, well, now everything's, the more we do this, the more we're making things into tiny little, we're losing meaning in a sense or something, because we're making things too, does that make sense? I don't know if I'm,
But can we pick things apart or see the more particular things without losing the meaning? Because losing the meaning is bad.
yeah, that's true. Yeah, I don't know.
And I don't want to say that it's necessary because it's bad. Or like, yeah.
Yeah, I can see that. This reminds me of that Altered States movie, but I don't want to ruin it for anybody. But gosh.
Hmm.
Now I'm intrigued.
That movie, a lot of stuff reminds me of it, but it's basically, to give you, I won't try to spoil it. I can tell you what it's about. It's basically like a scientist guy who's kind of obsessed with philosophy and religion as well. So it's kind of like all those ideas are kind of slammed into this movie, and it's just he's trying to find out basically the meaning of life. And so this guy is basically taking extreme amounts of psychedelics in like those, what are those chambers where you're just floating and you can't sense deprivation chambers, to try to just discover, I guess, what's there. So it slams everything together. It's a ride, and it's a fun film. But yeah, I don't know, it's with the particularizing everything, I don't necessarily want to say it's necessary, but then I don't know if it's necessary for, it feels like a fall, like to me. I don't know why, but I don't know if that's right in order for
Yes.
communication in a way, because even with language, like languages always seems like a fall, because you're taking an idea and you're reducing it to like just this
Yeah.
word, and this word really contains something a lot of times much more than what you're just putting into it. And so that's why I think people are even intrigued with like more ancient languages, because the more the ancient the language seems to be, like it's closer to the thought or something. So you can read a word like in the beginning of towards the beginning of the Bible, and it could mean like like breath can mean spirit and can mean wind and
Yeah,
can mean
I
all
love-
these things. So it's
yeah.
like it's closer to like this thought, but then in the English language, then we particularize it and we're like, okay, no, but this is spirit, this is breath. But it's like that's
Mhm.
almost necessary because you're trying to communicate a more focused idea to someone. But then it still feels like a fall because you're somehow losing I don't know.
Yeah, I
the-
think I have both. Like, because that's like the idea of like the transcendent particular, or sort of how even the most particular smallest thing, if it's fully what it is connected. But I think the pattern of the fall is like falling but losing the connection to source at the same time. Because if to fall itself is bad, then existence itself is bad, because there's always division in existence. I mean, between self and other, that like first sort of division that gives rise to everything, then that has to be bad. But then that just means the whole thing of existence is just like pointless, which I suppose some people sort of think, but it's a hopeless way to think. But I guess there's a way to like, there's a way to particularize without losing maybe the bigger picture, like without losing the connection to unity. The difference between a unit and unity is what Renee or
Mhm.
somebody's.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
But I guess
Yeah.
the only, or the best example I have of that is like if you marry somebody and then you've like lost, like you love them completely, then you can't love any other human being in that same like complete way. But if you're committed to like the right person, it's not like, it really opens things up rather than, as you would imagine, shutting them down. To me, that's what they're like talking. Yeah. Think
That's
about
really
it. Like, well,
interesting.
there's 8 billion people in the world, and you're just gonna live your life with one person. But that's not, if someone's happily married, that's not the experience of it. It's like,
Yeah, it makes
know,
the landscape even broader.
Mhm.
Tell us about that, Greg. He got married this
I
year.
think,
Yeah, congratulations.
thank you. I think those are really good points. It's a hard problem. I'll have to spend more time thinking
It's-
about it. I wouldn't have, Abigail, I like that you related the dissection to particularization and the
Yes, it's really interesting. It feels
transcend.
like what you're saying, Abigail, feels related to like the whole topic in general, and even the whole idea of the self-sacrificial nature of love that I was talking about earlier.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
if you look at it in the way you describe the marriage too, it's almost yeah, it's weird. It's like there's not um if there is an aspect of self-sacrifice going on, yourself isn't being sacrificed in a way. It's more just being like opened up. But I don't know how, that's what I mean. Like I'd like to explore that topic some more too, because I don't think I have. And that's when I was talking to Natalie about it, my youngest sister. I was saying like I just maybe just the language isn't right or something,
Mhm.
because she'll say, like she'll defend selfishness in a way, and I'm like, that sounds wrong to me. I'm like, but I understand where she's coming from, because it's like, because I understand losing yourself by not doing that and being pulled apart. And then and so when I say self-sacrifice, she hears like the other side.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but it's this way where it's like, I don't know, where it's like, yeah, it's like in the marriage, it's all happening at once or something. And so it's because you have to give of yourself in the marriage in a way, but then at the same time through that, it's like, I don't know. That's what I mean. I don't really know how to explain it the right language, because it's like both are there. I don't know. I'd like to hear what you guys think. It almost reminds me of when Sherry is talking about when you see yourself in the mirror. Like when you're a child, you're just kind of living, and experiencing life and living life, and you can be anything and all things, and it's like you don't and people then you show the child itself in the mirror and they're like, that's not me, like I'm Spider-Man, like I'm this, I'm that, like what was this? And then for them, as you grow older, you more identify with that one person in the mirror, and for some reason it seems like it's related to that to me. I don't know why.
Yeah, I guess that would be a particularization. That's another kind, because the classic narrative of childhood to adult is another retelling of the fall narrative, going from innocence and jubilance and freedom to like a 9 to 5 and very boring. So I think it is the same type of.
But that looking in the mirror, you're seeing yourself and you're focusing on yourself and you're finding yourself.
Mhm.
So in that way, when I hear someone say be selfish, like I think that's what it kind of is, but it's not how I normally think of selfishness or something. Because it's like that is a process that needs to happen, but it is kind of a weird fall in a way, because it's because you're finding who you are in that, I think, and you're seeing who you are and discovering who you are. But it is I don't know. I don't know how to
But
get
it's a
around this.
limiting. Yeah, it's like it's a limiting, and it's a sort of death or an accepting of finitude, however you say that. That's what I said. I have this whole video on like what did I call it? The cross as vocation or something like that. Because that's how I interpret the symbol of the cross these days, is as death in the sense of finding and accepting my personal limitations as a finite being, and just completely pouring myself into those limitations, and consenting to be only what I am. Like, because you see that, and that opens up somehow, just like the cross opens up through resurrection into like transcendence, like that opens up into greater freedom. And one other example other than marriage is like religion. Like, I believe that all religions, or that, yeah, I don't think that Christianity is inherently like more valid than another, but for me, that's Christianity is like my language, and I see things very much through that lens. But if I was to try to say, oh, Christianity is just, for me, just one among another, and to try to mix them all together, it works for some people. For me, that doesn't work. I would be confused. It would be muddled. But if I take Christianity, focus on that, and then know the other sort of by analogy, that opens up and allows me to have, I think, an analogically like complete picture of the universe. But it's through that limitation. But it isn't, I wouldn't describe it as like a sacrifice. I wouldn't describe it as like giving something up, because it doesn't feel that way.
Yeah, that's really interesting. That's a really good way of putting it too.
I guess as far as this like self-sacrifice part goes, is it like, do you think it's like good to dislike yourself, or like?
No, it's where you
Self-belief.
kind of no, I don't think I'd necessarily say that. I guess even the times I think about when I feel most, I guess, integrated, you could say, if that's the right way of putting it, are the times where like I'm not looking in the mirror anymore. Like even right now, if I'm looking at myself on the screen, I'm like it's just, it starts, I don't know, where I feel like where I'm more focused on others, but not it's not that I lose myself in it, I don't know, but I haven't, that's what I mean, I haven't had that experience of where you literally are giving of yourself so much that you can't find yourself, or trying to constantly put others first to where you lose your own identity in a way. And I don't know that I ever had that, because I think I went more of a selfish route of like I'm just gonna do what I want. And yeah. But yeah, so I don't know if maybe that's why. Yeah,
Yeah.
I guess where it's self-sacrifice, where I would say something like that is like if, where if like I had a sandwich or something and there was a kid on the street who was hungry, and it's like I'd give my sandwich for that kid or something like that, where it's like um it's not really. And then but see, in that act, it's like I would find more of my identity in a way, because
Yeah.
I'm acting in love, and it's not really sacrificing my identity in a way, I guess. It's more of it's more deeds, I guess, and things like that. I don't really know.
Yeah, and like you're integrating that kid into yourself
Hmm.
now, and you're feeding him with the food that feeds you, and now you're like connected and you're taking care of him and
Yeah.
connected.
But I
Yeah.
mean, I understand where it's a I feel like it's a terrible problem too, because I understand there are times where, I mean, you see churches do this where they'll be like, well, you need to serve. And you do. I mean,
Mhm.
serving's a good thing, but then pretty soon, like, and so you're sacrificing your time and your attention, and you're sacrificing basically your life for that. And then um and I don't even know that they mean to do it. And they probably think they're giving you purpose or something like that by giving you all these things to do. But then before you know it, you're lost and you don't know who you are anymore. And it feels like you've laid your body out there and it's been picked apart by vultures or something. And I mean, I did never experience that, but I could see how that happens. And I've seen that happen in churches and stuff like that. So, and I don't want to say that, yeah, that's what I mean. I don't want to necessarily say they're intentional in doing that. I think
Mhm.
sometimes they are for sure, but I don't know that they always are. I think maybe it just sometimes happens, but um, I don't know.
Yeah. To me, the whole language of like, well, I guess what I think is this whole sort of thing comes from, or misunderstanding, if you could say, comes from the idea of like understanding original sin in a way that I am inherently flawed type of thing. So if we start with that premise, that I'm inherently flawed, then I should like try to get rid of myself. I should dislike myself. Then if I'm hurt, it's good and stuff like that. When that little seed is like in there, it sort of corrupts everything and gives you a rather false picture of how to relate to the world or like to God or like to another person. I guess I think that's at least theologically or philosophically where it comes from. Because to me, or the assumption that I am, or like similarly, the assumption that I am inherently selfish, and like that's selfish in a bad way. Like that if I was let to do whatever I want, what I would do is just devour like the whole world and destroy it, and just like take, which isn't really true. I mean, I think as soon as a human being is given what they need, and like given love and given support and given a healthy identity, how many people in the world have that? Not very many. But as soon as somebody has that, they give and they're just happy and they want, or like even kids are like that, they'll like share, they'll like um yeah, in just a very free like way. It's just the phrase like you can't serve from an empty vessel. Um the only way to get an empty vessel to serve is by self-sacrifice and is by pushing them and is by like doing all this. So then we say, well, that needs to happen because that's the only way to get stuff done. Otherwise, people are just selfish. People are starving, really.
Craig, you've been quiet. You got anything?
Just taking it in, trying to see how you guys see things.
I'd like to hear how you see things too. It's hard for me because I just think yeah, I'm trying to figure out the right way to talk about it. I feel like I still haven't quite got it yet. I mean, I feel like there's an understanding that goes back and forth between, because I talked to Abigail about it, I talked to Natalie about it, um and it seems to me like they've had both similar experiences. And Abigail, I know she hasn't talked to Natalie or anything, but Natalie and stuff. And I don't know if you know everything that went on with her. I'm kind of giving some of her, but she was involved in churches a lot too, but I think it was just kind of, and I don't think it was just churches, but just the way she's made to it was a lot of putting other people before herself all the time, to where I think she finally came to a state of like, I just need to choose me. Like, God, I need to choose me. Um, and so then my experience was like, oh, I'll just choose me. And then I ended up with just me. And then I was like, well, what do I
Oh,
do now? Like,
that's
this is,
weird.
yeah.
Wait,
What?
I just okay, wait, hold up. That's right. I'll just choose me and then you ended up because I guess you didn't have like the other piece of it, which was that other people are part of yourself as well.
Yeah,
And
no,
that
yeah. So like,
you choose yourself by choosing them. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well, I mean, my experience, I just got to a place where I was very bitter and cynical. Then I was just, yeah, just to where then I was selfish in the way that just I ended up with just myself, because I was continually choosing myself over other people, to where I wasn't even in communion with people anymore, because it was just like, well, I don't want to be around people.
Mhm,
I just want to do my own thing. Uh,
mhm.
and so I think, I mean, I wasn't like totally alone. I still had family and stuff, but um, it definitely got to a place where it was more of a self exaltation, where I was like exalting myself over other people too. And yeah, so I don't know. It did, but I didn't have I don't think I had a weird type of, or I don't want to say weird, but like a where I felt like I lost myself at any point in my life, unless I was just oblivious to it when I was drinking in college or something and didn't really know what was going on. I don't know. But yeah, so I mean, I just yeah, trying to understand that, and um find the right language for it. I'm not really sure what to even say. It seems like there's both that needs to happen, because there needs to be, because you're not gonna know yourself without community around you, because they also
Yeah.
press on who you are in a way, but then they can also pull you apart too. You can lose yourself. So you have to have like this center
Mhm,
along with everyone else around you. And if it's
mhm,
just the center, then it's just you, and it's not, it's miserable. And then if it's just, because if you're just choosing the center all the time, then there'll come points where you're cutting people off, and you're cutting people off. And that's what I think I experienced. Um, and then, but if you're just choosing everyone else, you don't even find your center, or find your stability, and then you just kind of dissipate or something. So yeah, I don't know.
yeah. And I guess because with me, got to the same place as you, but the opposite way. So it must be similar in a deeper level because it was leading to the same place, which was being really bitter, being out of communion with people. I was in college, I'm like looking at my two roommates, they're like talking in confidence and whatever, and I'm just so angry. And they're nice people, and I hate myself for being angry at them. I'm so angry at them. So I'm like, I am not close to anyone like that, and like I don't have that trust. But it
Wow.
was not having any like self-worth, so to speak, or not being able to trust people or not being able to receive love because the way that I was taught, it's like you shouldn't, and you should just say you're bad and like push that away. And you're also pushing other people away if you don't
Mm,
let them love you back, or if you're giving yourself to people who can't love you back. So it can be either way. I mean, some people you give and they just don't reciprocate in the right way, and other people you give and maybe they do reciprocate in the right way, and you're just like, ah, no, I'm bad, which isn't really virtuous because thing is to
yeah.
love and be loved. There's like, but the image for I guess the middle or the synthesis of that, what is Christ? He was our image of whatever is meant by self-sacrifice, right? Being torn apart literally for us. Did he say, take, eat, this is my body? What's the result of that? That Christ's body becomes literally the whole universe. And we're all integrated into it. So Christ is in no way diminished by that, like quite the opposite.
Hmm.
Guys, I'm gonna have to go. You keep going, but I appreciate you letting me pop in and out
Well,
here.
can I ask you a question? Do you have to go right this minute, or can I ask you?
I've got a
Okay,
minute.
and then, all right, because this was the other question that popped in my head, because this was kind of related to something me and Luke Johnston were talking about with Jed, and we were talking about AI. And so, like, if you, I said this statement, it's really like stuck with me, and I don't know why I even said it at the time, but so if you're creating, if you're gonna make a creature like a Pinocchio or something, so like even we could say God's creating us, and it's kind of gets at to, I think, the original topic, like with suffering and the problem of evil. So if you're gonna make an AI, um, my question I asked Jed was, I was like, well, does it suffer? Like that's what I want to know, because for some reason I don't. I feel like suffering would make it empathetic. Like I don't know why. Like it would almost. Yeah, it's a weird statement, but you can think about that as you go. Unless you got an answer now, would
I'll
you?
think about it as I go.
Okay, all right, fine. All right. We'll try to explore
Um,
it here.
Abigail, it was really nice to meet you again.
You said,
See you guys.
See you, Greg.
yeah, like that's a common not stereotype, but like that's common knowledge or like wisdom that suffering makes you empathetic. And I guess people who suffer often are empathetic. And I, even looking at my life, I could very easily look at it and think, okay, yeah, my suffering made me empathetic. But I don't think that leads me in the right direction. It leads me to like scorn people who haven't suffered. It would lead me to inflict suffering on others if I was really logical about it. But
Yeah, I know,
think
right?
what it is, yeah, see what it is, I just don't think it can be true because like I don't want my kids to go through anything, if I ever have any, to go through anything that I ever went through.
Yeah.
I like where I am right now. But my reaction to that is not, oh, let me take them through the same process. It's never again.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just can't be.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, because I was thinking about it. Maybe kids is a better way of looking at it too. Because I was thinking about, I don't know why I was just thinking about AI when we were talking about it, and I was like, even if it didn't, gosh, because there's these questions in the Bible sometimes that come up, and where it says like, what is man? And the angels are looking at man. They're like, what is man? Like, what is this thing you've created, God? What is this creature? And it's like, if we created an AI, or you could say like a being of whatever it is, doesn't have to be robots. We would probably look at it and be like, what is this? Like, what is this? And it's, I don't think, even if you loved your creation so much, and then we all died and wanted this AI to go on, it's like that's fine. Like that, you don't even have to. I mean, I shouldn't say that's fine, but like if you're just you're willing, like, okay, this is the next thing that's going to be there. Like, well, then it's your two children. Like then it's your children now, and so like, how do you make sure it loves one another? Like even when you're not there, and that's why I was like, does it have to? I I don't want to say it has to suffer, but it's almost like um they have to suffer each other. I don't know. It's weird. It's like maybe that's the problem, because you're giving them, if you create a creature like God created man, and then he's given each one its individuality, then within that process, it's like it has the opportunity to harm each other.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't know that the suffering is like inflicted, but I'm just like, I don't know. It's really strange. I'm just not sure. It's not that it has to suffer, but it's like it has to suffer together because it has to suffer one another, or something like that. You have to actually, um, in order to accept somebody's differences or how they're different than you, it's like this weird. If you don't do that, you're gonna hurt them, or
Mhm.
something like that. And then, but to do that, it's almost like this weird infliction upon yourself, but not in a bad way.
Mhm.
But but where you kind of have to, yeah, I don't know, because it's like, why wouldn't you want to just, if they're different than you, why wouldn't you want to just make them like yourself, or something
Mhm.
like that? But then it's like, well, you kind of have to, like you were talking about earlier, like make space without losing yourself. And there's this weird, I guess, fear that goes along with that, because when you're making space for someone who's different than you, there's a fear you might lose yourself in a way or something like that.
Or there
I
is
don't know.
that fear, I think, because of the world that we live in. Like,
Probably right.
you
Yeah.
have a good point with like, because suffering just means to let or to allow, like, and it certainly in this world, you kind of like do have to be, and that probably you're gonna get hurt. Not that you go looking for it, or not that you don't try to avoid it, but it's like kind of a thing that happens because of the kind of selves there are in the world. But if you close yourself off and don't let yourself feel anything, which I also have done for a long time, then you really can't have any relationship, and that's not good. And it just makes you suffer more, honestly.
Yeah. Oh, I think I might be cutting out. Hold on. Oh no.
You can expect that if you open to someone, they're
Sorry.
probably hurt you.
I think it might have been me. I think it might have cut out for a while.
Oh yeah.
I don't know. I didn't hear what you just said.
What
Sorry.
did I say last? Or what
You were talking about suffering is to let, and then when you are opening yourself up, and then it cut out for probably like a good minute. I don't know. I was trying to get inside, see if it worked better.
So yeah, it's true that, or like it's a good point about a being has to be open to other
Mhm.
different beings. But does that necessarily have to come with fear? Like, does it have to come with pain? Oftentimes it does in the world that we live in. But
Yeah,
I
I
don't
don't
think
think
it,
it.
yeah.
I don't think it necessarily does. Yeah, there's this guy. I don't. Do you watch Grail Country at all?
No. But
Okay.
I'm like subscribed.
Okay. Well, they had a guy on a while back named Tyler, and me and Cal and Luke talked to him, but we didn't record it. But it sounded kind of similar where he was talking about he just drew a circle, and then he said this is like the easiest way of understanding is you have a circle, and then um and that's the simplest way. Like you have an inside. I think he might have put a dot in the center too. So you have like an inside and outside. And it's just like this. In the world we live in, there exists this fear of like the outside or extending that circle. And it's like this, what's stopping that is it seemed like that's kind of where we ended up getting at. It seems like this weird fear of death in a way,
Mhm.
is what's kind of holding it back because which is just in the world that we live in, like you mentioned. So if we were to death by death, like you mentioned earlier, or something like that, if that were properly, I don't know, integrated or perceived in the right way, then it wouldn't be. We would lose that fear of death, and it would, it w- it w- it would be like the same thing. Like the process of it would be, I don't know. If I'm
Yeah,
even
yeah,
making sense.
exactly. Yeah, if we die to death and don't give any place to the devil. But it is very easy to do that in a wrong way, like your sister would do, or like me, and just try to fully give yourself to the first person who comes along. Like somehow that process also involves finding persons, even in the fallen world, who like are good for you and who you can trust. Find the life and feed it. I also was drawing circles. This was for another talk, but I guess it has to do with the same thing he was talking about for circles of like the self and the other. So like this is how I understand like quote unquote self-love or like relating of myself and others.
Okay.
Is
Yeah.
that there's sort of yourself, because if you think about it, the distinction, there are many gestalts and selves that the world's made up of course, like that's real. But at the same time, it's sort of a fuzzy distinction. There's all the bacteria inside of us, there's like the parts of our body and our organs, then there's a family, which is a unit that's bigger than a self, and there's like a city, and there's like God, who is of course everything is contained in the God, So it's not just like there's myself and then there's everybody else. Like that's not the only, there's also other distinctions that cut across that and that integrate part of me, but not, and like very complex. And so when you look at it that way, as all of these different gestalts and all these different units and different selves sort of very much interacting, and myself is one of those, then it's to like very obvious that if you have bitterness or if you have dislike within yourself, sort of as a pattern going on within yourself, you can't just be like, well, I dislike myself, I scorn myself, I sacrifice myself, but I'm gonna love everybody else and affirm them. And it's like, that's two different patterns, and it's gonna
Yeah.
bleed out. Like it's all
Yeah.
the same. If you have the same spirit of harmony within yourself, then you can extend that to everybody else.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, I like
There's-
that a lot. That kind of reminds me of the image he drew too. Wish we didn't record it. We were about to record it, and then Tyler said, "You guys are just gonna have to deal with the fact that some things need to die and do this and record it." And I was like, "All right." So it's not there, but it was a good conversation. We'll get him back in at some point, but I don't know. But anyways, I might hop off here though, if that's okay. I think it's probably about a storm, so I think that's why my internet's getting kind of spotty. But thanks for doing this. So I can send you the recording, and you can put it on your channel or whatever if you want.
Thanks. Yeah, it was really
Yeah.
fun. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, message me anytime too. And do you have my number?
Wait, did you stop recording?
Oh,
Wait,
I
put
don't
that
know.
there.
I can. You want me to cut off? Hold on one
If
second.
you're gonna say your note, yeah, you probably should. Unless you want
Okay.
people randomly text you. Although
I'll just
I've
stop it
had some
here.
people on my channel that I wouldn't want.
I'll just stop it here.